Food safety and hygiene govern everything that you will do within the catering industry. No matter how great a product may taste, if it has not been prepared, stored, and served to a legally set standard, its consumption could lead to injury, illness, or even death. But do not worry. Good food safety and hygiene practices are not all that difficult to follow. Just stick to the rules set out in this unit and your kitchen will remain a happy, healthy, safe place to work. By the end of this unit and the successful completion of the end of the unit test, you will have received all the appropriate training required to work legally, safely, and hygienically in a food handling environment. Introduction. The catering industry covers a wide range of settings, including hotels, restaurants, pubs and bars, leisure, takeaways, hospitals, schools, cafes, hospitality, tourism, supermarkets, and many more. If your place of work does not fall into one of these categories, do not worry. As long as your job involves the handling and/or serving of food, this unit will be relevant to you. Terminology. Throughout this unit, we will be discussing the two main areas of good food handling practice: food safety and food hygiene. But what does this mean? In a nutshell, food safety is the practice of protecting food from anything that could harm a consumer's health. Food hygiene means ensuring that the food is free from contamination, is wholesome, and is fit for consumption. Failure to follow food safety and hygiene procedures can result in a very real risk of harm to the consumer and can potentially damage a business reputation. It can also lead to a criminal conviction. Remember, good food safety and hygiene practices are required by law. Contamination. Food contamination is the presence of unwanted microorganisms or other foreign matter in food. We've all read the horror stories of customers finding unexpected and unwelcome items in their food. Woman finds mouse droppings in her takeaway carton. Prison sentence for owner of filthy restaurant. Child chokes on plastic found in chocolate bar. These are all examples of food contamination. Contamination can occur at any stage of the food production process. Once food has been contaminated, it is unfit for consumption and so cannot be served to a customer. Serving contaminated food could result in that customer becoming ill or injured. Spoilage. Food spoilage occurs when it becomes contaminated with something that is not harmful, but still renders it unfit to serve. This could be a hair or other inedible object in the food, or food that has not been stored correctly, resulting in a change to its colour, texture, taste or smell. It is often possible to identify food spoilage just by using our senses. Does it smell strange or offensive? Does it taste unpleasant? Does it look different to normal? Has its texture changed? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, the food should not be served and you must notify your supervisor immediately. Once food becomes contaminated or spoiled, it cannot be served. This means that food that was once intended to be sold has now become wastage. A business will no longer make money through the sale of that food, resulting in a loss of profits for the business. Reasons for contamination and spoilage. When food does cause illness or injury, it is very important to find the cause of the problem. Here is a list of some of the most common explanations. Poor temperature control, lack of personal hygiene, poorly maintained equipment, cross-contamination, improper storage, contaminated ingredients, procedures not followed, lack of understanding and ignorance to dangers, lack of training. In order to minimise the risk of this happening, and so maintain excellent standards of food safety and hygiene, we must employ the practice of prevention and control. That is, prevent food from becoming contaminated through careful control of the production process. Prevention. Key steps for prevention are thorough cleaning, maintaining equipment, controlling pests, personal hygiene. The key here is to prevent contamination from happening by adopting best practice methods as part of the daily routine. Number 1. Ensure that all equipment and work areas are properly cleaned according to a set cleaning rota and using the correct cleaning products. Number 2, ensure that all equipment is regularly checked for defects and worn parts and thoroughly cleaned after use. Number 3, take measures to deter pests from entering the workplace by maintaining a clean workplace and conducting regular checks. Number 4, the biggest threat to food safety is the person handling the food. By maintaining a high level of personal hygiene, you can ensure that you are not part of the problem. Prevention can be strengthened through the further processes of food safety risk assessment and the implementation of effective accident and sickness report procedures. Control. By controlling each step in the food production process, the risk of contamination is kept to a minimum. The 4 critical steps of production are receiving, preparing, holding, handling. Receiving. Goods arrive at the workplace on a daily basis. By monitoring the quality of those goods, the risk of contamination is minimised. Number 1, use quality suppliers and ingredients. Number 2, check all goods upon receipt. Number 3, return or refuse to accept any defective goods. Number 4, check that all goods meet the legal delivery temperature and/or transit requirements. Preparing. Whilst preparing goods for consumption, certain criteria must be met in order to maintain safe working practices. Ensure that correct cooking temperatures are achieved. Use reliable equipment to ensure that those temperatures are accurate. Identify areas of possible cross-contamination. Maintain a clean and tidy work area. Holding. Food should be stored according to its type. For example, raw meat requires refrigeration. Most dry goods do not. Holding temperature and certain time regulations also apply to certain foodstuffs. By adhering to these regulations and practices, the risk of contamination is further reduced. Store all foodstuffs in suitable conditions. Ensure that holding temperatures for both hot and chilled foods are adhered to. Adopt a robust regime of safe storage and stock rotation. Always label stored food. Handling. Safe handling practices are the last line of defence between food leaving the production area and it reaching the consumer. Practice alongside the other critical steps. Vigilant handling of the food will ensure that it reaches the consumer in a safe and fit state. Number 1, maintain meticulous personal hygiene. Number 2, where necessary, wear protective gloves or clothing. Number 3, always wash hands before handling foodstuffs. Number 4, keep accurate sickness reporting records. Poor food safety and hygiene can result in a number of outcomes, including food poisoning, prosecutions and fines, product recalls, customer complaints, pest infestations, increased food spoilage, loss of business, compensation claims, damaged reputation. Now for an activity exercise to help you demonstrate what you have learnt. Let's take a look at some examples. Of these statements, which ones do you think are real food safety problems? Salmonella in undercooked chicken can cause food poisoning. Yes, undercooking a chicken can lead to salmonella. A customer complains that her steak is overcooked. This is not great for the customer, but it is not a food safety problem. A man breaks his tooth on a piece of metal in his salad. Yes, this is a food safety problem. Traces of peanut in a fruitcake cause an allergic reaction. Yes, this is a food safety problem. A child suffers chemical burns after drinking juice containing oven cleaner. Yes, this is a food safety problem. A customer catches a cold after eating at your restaurant. This would be unfortunate for the customer, but it does not pose a food safety problem. A customer contracts Norovirus after eating mussels at your restaurant. Yes, this is a food safety problem. In summary, food safety means ensuring that food and drinks are safe to consume. Food hygiene is everything that we must do to ensure that food is safe. Contaminated food can cause injury and illness. Spoiled food may or may not be harmful, but it is unfit to eat and could result in complaints. Food safety excellence means implementing good prevention and control along every step of food processing and handling. Foodborne illness. Here, we will look at the main foodborne illnesses and how they may affect us. The main foodborne illnesses can be split into 3 categories. Microorganisms, for example bacteria, viruses or mould. Chemicals, for example cleaning agents, additives, pesticides, including fungicides, rodenticides, insecticides, cross-contamination of allergens, metallic elements. Natural poisons, some fungi, certain pulses, tubers, leaves and flowers, some fish and shellfish. Foodborne illness may occur when food has been contaminated and can result in food poisoning or foodborne disease. Contaminated food may not always be obvious to spot. Contaminated food can sometimes look, smell, feel and taste just like it should, which is why it is so important to exercise good food safety and hygiene measures in order to minimise the risk of contamination. The time delay between eating contaminated food and showing symptoms of illness is known as the incubation period, or onset time. The onset time of one contaminant can vary greatly from another. For example, a bacterial cause such as E. coli 0157 can have an onset time of 2 to 3 days, whereas the bacteria Staphylococcus aureus can present symptoms in just 1 to 2 hours. Fungal toxins can present themselves in a matter of minutes or after many hours and can be fatal if untreated. Chemical contamination from a cleaning agent, for example, could manifest itself within 30 minutes. The onset time is also dictated by the person who has become infected. A fit and healthy 25-year-old woman may take 3 days to show signs of E. coli infection, but an elderly woman or young child may present symptoms within a day. When struck down with food poisoning, most people will blame the last thing they ate, but because of the onset time of some contaminants, this may not be the case. Vulnerable groups. For the most part, a foodborne illness will cause little more than mild discomfort and inconvenience. But for some sectors of society, the risk of harm is much greater and can even result in serious illness or death. These include the very young, the elderly, pregnant women, people recovering from illness, people with a weakened immune system, hospital patients. This is why good food safety and hygiene practices are so important. When we serve food to a customer, we simply cannot know their current state of health. By following safe practices, we are able to minimise the chance of anybody becoming ill from the food we serve. Once a person is infected with a food poisoning bacteria, they become a carrier. This means that the bacteria is present within their systems, and they have the potential to pass that bacteria on to others. Sometimes a person can be carrying food poisoning bacteria without ever having shown signs of illness. Other people may have recovered from food poisoning and appear to be perfectly well, but the bacteria remains in their systems. These are known as convalescent carriers. Even though they may appear fit and healthy, they can still spread the bacteria, both to other people and to food. If at any time you suffer from the symptoms of food poisoning whilst in work, you must not handle food. You must immediately report your illness to your supervisor, and you may not re-enter a food handling role until you have been clear from illness for a minimum of 48 hours. Even then, you could still be a convalescent carrier. This is why you must wash your hands thoroughly before handling food and follow all best food safety practices whilst in the workplace. Common types of foodborne illness. The most common source of foodborne illness is bacteria, of which there are many. Some illnesses are caused by viruses, such as Norovirus. Viral and bacterial illnesses take effect in different ways, and so must be controlled differently. Fungal illnesses are most often caused by the ingestion of poisonous mushrooms. Though compared to bacterial and viral foodborne illnesses, this is rare. Chemical-derived foodborne illnesses are chiefly the result of cross-contamination. The improper use of cleaning agents and/or storage issues are often to blame. E-coli 0157. The E. coli bacteria is commonly found in the human intestines and is mostly harmless. However, the E. coli 0157 strain is extremely harmful. This virulent strain can cause vomiting and diarrhea that can ultimately lead to kidney damage and failure. Onset times are relatively quick, anything from a few hours to 2 to 5 days, and once symptoms present themselves, they rapidly progress. Outbreaks have been known to result in multiple deaths. Sources of E. coli 0157 are infected cattle. For example, raw meat, unpasteurized dairy produce, raw vegetables, and from the guts of infected persons. Clostridium. Although a common cause of food poisoning, Clostridium can often be ingested with no adverse effects. There are two main types of Clostridium bacterium: Clostridium perfringens and Clostridium botulinum. Clostridium perfringens is the less serious of the two, causing abdominal pain and diarrhea. Clostridium botulinum can lead to respiratory problems, difficulty breathing, and even paralysis. Both strains of Clostridium are widely found in our surroundings: in the soil, in the air, in water, in vegetation, and are commonly linked to foods including vegetables, raw meat, fish, and poultry. Symptoms normally show within 24 hours of ingestion. Salmonella. Salmonella is closely related to E. coli bacteria, harming both humans and other animals. Symptoms include stomach pain, vomiting, diarrhea, and fever, and incubation times vary from a few hours to 2 days after infection. Salmonella can be found in raw meat and poultry, unpasteurized dairy products, polluted water, raw unwashed vegetables, as well as in feces of humans and other animals. Listeria. Listeria is most commonly associated with unpasteurized cheeses, but other high-risk foods include pate, salad vegetables, and many soft cheeses. Listeria bacteria can lead to listeriosis, which typically presents itself with flu-like symptoms, but can then lead to other more serious conditions, including meningitis, miscarriage amongst pregnant women, and possible death within vulnerable groups. It is for this reason that expectant mothers are advised to avoid eating the aforementioned foods. Listeria can have a long incubation period of up to 70 days, so symptoms may take some time to appear after eating contaminated foods. Campylobacter. Campylobacter is the most common cause of acute bacterial diarrhea. It is found in animals and poultry, and so the most common sources are raw meat, raw chicken, and unpasteurized milk. Symptoms include persistent abdominal pain and diarrhea, often bloody, after a typical incubation period of around 3 to 5 days. Bacillus cereus. Bacillus cereus is part of a huge genus of bacteria. It is spore-forming, meaning that it can produce endospores that are particularly resilient to extreme heat and cold. For this reason, the cooking temperature of high-risk foods must be carefully monitored. It presents in one of two forms: emetic or diarrheal. The diarrheal form causes diarrhea and gastrointestinal pain and can have an onset time of 8 to 16 hours. For this reason, it is sometimes referred to as long incubation Bacillus cereus. Given the similar symptoms, it is often mistaken for Clostridium perfringens. It is commonly contracted from infected meat, seafood, dairy, and vegetables. The more common emetic form is sometimes referred to as fried rice syndrome, as it was commonly contracted through fried rice dishes that had not been heated to or held at a sufficiently high temperature. It is found in rice, pasta, and cereals, and has a shorter onset time than the diarrhea form, typically 1 to 5 hours. Symptoms include stomach pain, nausea, and vomiting. Its symptoms are similar to those of Staphylococcus aureus. Bacillus cereus accounts for less than 5% of food poisoning cases in the UK. It is for this reason that it is often misdiagnosed as Clostridium or Staphylococcus. Dysentery. Dysentery is an intestinal illness transmitted through faecal matter. As such, it presents itself in the form of diarrhoea. In some cases, blood and mucus will also be present. Other symptoms include abdominal pain and fever. Infection tends to occur in institutional settings where hygiene is difficult to monitor, such as primary schools. The bacteria are transferred through oral contact with infected faecal matter, or by the consumption of food that has been handled by an infected person. Symptoms typically show within 1 to 3 days, and at most a week. As dysentery is not an issue caused by any particular foodstuff, but is purely a hygiene cross-contamination issue, good food safety and hygiene practices are the best form of control. Staphylococcus aureus. Staphylococcus bacteria are found in the nasal passage, throats, and on the hair and skin of healthy humans. They are also found in animals. The species normally linked to foodborne illness is Staphylococcus aureus. This is commonly found in meat and poultry, vegetables, and some dairy products. It has a rapid onset time of 1 to 8 hours, with symptoms including low temperature, acute vomiting, abdominal pain, and headache. Norovirus. Norovirus, sometimes known as Norwalk virus or the winter vomiting bug, is a viral illness that causes vomiting, diarrhoea, fever, and abdominal pain. Due to its highly infectious nature, spreading rapidly from person to person and also through contaminated water, Norovirus is most problematic in closely populated settings, such as schools, hospitals, offices, and prisons. Onset times are typically 1 to 3 days, with symptoms lasting 3 to 4. Although not a severe illness, most people recover within a week, it can be more serious when contracted by vulnerable groups. Mycetism. Mycetism is the name given to mushroom fungi poisoning. Commercially grown fungi rarely pose a threat. The vast majority of mycetism cases are the result of ingesting wild mushrooms. Many wild mushrooms are poisonous. They should not be gathered and eaten unless they have been positively identified as a safe variety. Most toxic mushrooms will cause vomiting or diarrhoea without any long-term damage. Some, however, are highly toxic or even deadly. The onset times of some poisonous mushrooms can be as little as a few minutes to several weeks after ingestion. Allergens. Allergens are anything that can cause an allergic reaction within a susceptible person. Common allergic conditions include celiac disease, an allergy to gluten, irritable bowel syndrome, a gastrointestinal disorder, often resulting in food intolerances, and lactose intolerance, an intolerance to a certain sugar found in certain dairy goods. People who suffer from allergies will normally be very aware of what goes into their food, often asking questions about ingredients and cooking methods. The presence of certain allergens, such as peanuts, dairy and gluten, should be clearly stated on a menu or product description. The biggest risk here comes from cross-contamination, which occurs when traces of allergens are passed on to other ingredients or dishes that should not contain them. Just a small trace of an allergen can cause illness. Any food can cause an allergic reaction, with the symptoms varying accordingly to the severity of the allergy. However, EU legislation identifies 14 foods that must be mentioned on food labelling. Wheat, eggs, peanuts, soya, milk, gluten, sesame seeds, nuts, mustard, lupin, fish, shellfish, celery, sulfur dioxide and sulfites. Wheat, eggs, peanuts, soya and milk are the most common causes of food-based allergic reactions. Allergen precautions. In order to minimise the risk of allergic reactions to food, you must be aware of everything that goes into it. Information about how products are made and what ingredients have been used must be made available. Cross-contamination must be avoided by storing high-risk allergenic foods separately. Always wash your hands before and after handling allergens. Use separate utensils and equipment when processing allergens. Clean and disinfect all work areas that have been used to prepare allergenic foods. Follow company policy on providing consumers with safety assurances. Know your ingredients and which are potential allergens. Allergic reaction symptoms. Allergic reactions can cause anything from a mild stomach upset, headache or nausea to swollen tissue, vomiting and respiratory failure. A person with a severe allergy will normally take precautions, possibly carrying vital information on their person, often in the form of a bracelet, neck chain, or increasingly a smartphone app, and may well carry emergency medication such as an EpiPen adrenaline injection. When working with food, you must take food allergy seriously. A severe allergy could kill. Some allergic reactions can take hold within seconds, others may take several hours. Symptoms vary, but commonly will cause one or more of the following: skin rash, fever, sweating, blurred vision, nausea, vomiting, stomach pain, headache, swollen tissue, especially the tongue, throat and lips, tingling sensation, difficulty breathing or speaking. A severe reaction can cause a person to go into anaphylactic shock, which can be life-threatening. Food intolerance. Food intolerance, like food allergy, takes place when certain foods are eaten by people who have an intolerance to that particular food. Where an intolerance differs from an allergy is in its severity. An intolerance will often cause considerable discomfort to the sufferer. It is not, however, life-threatening. Whereas only a trace of an allergen is enough to cause an allergic reaction, in general, a much larger amount is needed to trigger an intolerance. Now take time to review your notes, highlight any key points that you need to develop prior to starting the next section.